Hello everyone, my name is Hannah. Welcome to a new video, and today I am going to be doing my December wrap-up. So the final books that I have read in 2021, I had a really good reading month. I can tell just by looking at my ratings. I have a lot of 5 stars and 4.5 stars and 4 stars. There's a 3-star and a DNF. Those are the only bad books, and the 3-star book wasn't even that bad. So the first book that I read in December was The Little Book of Hookah by Mike Viking. This is just a really short nonfiction talking about the idea of Hookah, which is the Danish way of living well. It's like anything that you consider to be very comforting and cozy. That's basically what Hookah is. So candles and drinking warm drinks and fireplaces and curling up with a cozy blanket. All of those things are very Hookah. And this time of year I just get in the mood for cozy vibes. So I just wanted to read a little bit more about the idea of Hookah. And honestly, this is probably something that I could have just Googled the meaning of Hookah and gotten the same thing out of it that I got from this book. But I did think that it was still really good. I listened to it on audio, and Mike Viking, the author, is the one who narrated it, so that was kind of cool. But I decided not to rate this one just because it was a short nonfiction. So it's usually I rate books based on my enjoyment, and it's I don't know, I find that really hard to rate, so I just decided not to. Then I did my reread of A Court of Mist and Fury, A Court of Wings and Ruin, and A Court of Frost and Starlight. So I usually try to do a reread of A Court of Mist and Fury every year, and I hadn't reread it yet, and I've been thinking about it for several months because it's my favorite book of all time. And yeah, I decided to just pick it up. And I really wanted to read A Court of Frost and Starlight in December because this is set around winter solstice, and the characters are gift shopping for each other, and they do a winter holiday celebration. This is the time to read this book. So I was going to just read these two, but after I did my reread of A Court of Mist and Fury, I just really wanted to reread A Court of Wings and Ruin. I just wanted to follow the story. I didn't want to skip this book. Originally, I was I already know what happens. I don't really need to reread it. I've reread these books so many times that I know the story very, very well. But the enjoyment I get out of a reread, I was just in the mood for this. So I picked it up. And then, of course, I read A Court of Frost and Starlight, which was really fun. I think I read this in a day or two because it's so short. But yeah, I love this book. I love all these books. So obviously all of these are 5 stars. This is one of my favorite series of all time, my favorite book of all time. So yeah, it was just really fun to, kind of end the year rereading favorites. So yeah, that is that on those 3. Oh, and I picked up A Court of Frost and Starlight as my first book in the Merry and Bright Readathon. So I have 2 vlogs up for the Merry and Bright Readathon. They were part of my Vlogmas, Bookmas, 12 Days of Bookmas. And this is one that I used to fulfill the already owned challenge because obviously I've already owned it. I've already read it several times. So that's what I used for that challenge. Then the next book I picked up for the Merry and Bright Readathon was Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark. This was very kindly gifted to me by my friend Christina for my birthday several months ago. And one of the reading prompts for the Merry and Bright Readathon was an enemies to lovers romance. And this literally says right on the front, Brutal Prince, an enemies to lovers mafia romance. So that's why I picked this one up, because it just seemed like it was perfect, and they are legit enemies. They're from warring families in this mafia. They hate each other, and the first part of the book, they literally try to kill each other. So yeah, that's very enemies to lovers. And then of course you get the lovers part, which is also really fun. But yeah, I liked this one. I think I ended up giving it 3 stars, and it was good. It wasn't anything mind-blowing. I don't think that I'll ever reread it, but I would consider continuing on in this series. I believe there's 6 books in this series. Yeah, 6 right now. So following some of the other characters, the side characters from this book. So when I am back in a romance reading mood, I would probably consider picking up the next books, but this one was just decent. Now, last month I read The Bear and the Nightingale, and I really, really loved it, so I wanted to continue on with the series. So I picked up The Girl in the Tower by Catherine Arden, and I used this for the cozy vibes reading challenge on for the Merry and Bright Readathon. So this is a very winter fantasy. It follows Vasya, who lives in the outskirts of the Russian wilderness, and just the way that the winter is described and the things that people are doing because of like this cold, snowy setting were just really, really cozy. Like, it was very fun to read these books curled up with a blanket with like a hot cup of tea or cocoa, and it was just very cozy. And I really, really loved these books. I'm not sure which one is my favorite. Honestly, it might have been The Girl in the Tower, it might have been The Bear and the Nightingale, but then I could also say the same for the next book. Like, I don't know. I just love this series as a whole. But if you're looking for a cozy winter fantasy, definitely try out the Winter Night trilogy because I really loved it. So I read this for the Cozy Vibes challenge. And then I decided to pick up The Winter of the Witch right after that because I just wanted to stay in that story. It didn't fit any challenges for the Merry and Bright Readathon, but that's okay. I was just mood reading and this was what I was in the mood for. And I thought that this was a very good, satisfying finale to the series. But yeah, I don't want to say too much about this one or The Girl in the Tower because I don't want to spoil anything for The Bear and the Nightingale, but they're just set in Russia and it has a ton of Russian folklore and fairy tales, and I love Vasya as a character. I think I ended up giving both of these 4.5 stars, but I gave them 5 on Goodreads. I'm still not sure where I want to land on these. I think that they're probably more of a 5-star. I don't know why I'm being so critical, but yeah, that's where those are. And then I picked up Everyone's an Alien When You're an Alien Too by Jomny's son. His name's Jonathan's son, but everything in this book is like misspelled. I was gifted this for Christmas from Brandon and I just wanted to pick it up right away. It just seemed like a very quick read. Like, there's illustrations and not a lot of writing, so I read it in a single sitting. It's very existential, but I used this for the white on the cover challenge because obviously it's black and white, there's white on the cover. But yeah, this is like a little book about this alien who gets sent to Earth and he's supposed to like analyze humans, I don't know, for research. And so he's like learning about what makes a human human and like the things that they think about. And yeah, it was very existential. It was a cute little read. It talks a lot about like where you fit in. And I also decided to not rate this one because it's like, it was so short and there wasn't like a storyline really. I mean, there kind of was, but it was more just like the message that you get out of this book. So I just didn't want to rate it, so I didn't. The next book I picked up was The Broken Girls by Simone St. James. I was the guest host on Jan's Full Moon Book Club live show, and this was the book pick for December, and I'm so glad it was, and I'm very glad that Jan and I both loved this book. We have very, very different reading tastes. Like, most of the time, if Jan loved a book, I won't like it, and vice versa. But this one we actually agreed on. So we're going to add it to the pile, the small pile of books that we agree on. So this is a dual timeline thriller. One timeline is the 1950s, following these girls that are at this boarding school, this haunted boarding school. And then the other timeline is in 2014, following this investigative journalist whose sister, like her body, was found at this boarding school, and now in the present timeline, like 2014, somebody has bought the boarding school that has been not used for several years and is like renovating it for some reason. And so she's like trying to find a story there and also kind of solve her sister's murder. They did put a guy away for it, but she still like has questions about that night. And so you're going back and forth between the timelines, and I thought they were very well balanced. Like, I think I preferred the 1950s timeline, like the boarding school timeline, but I didn't mind going back and forth because I just liked both timelines and all the characters that we follow. So yeah, if you didn't watch the Full Moon live show, it's up on Jan's channel. We had some really good discussions about this book, so you can watch that for more of my thoughts and more of Jan's thoughts. I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I picked up was my December book of the month pick, which was A History of Wild Places by Shea Earnshaw. Now, I was really excited for this book because first of all, I really love the cover. I know I shouldn't care about that, but it's a really pretty cover. And it's marketed as magical realism, which I am like in the mood for magical realism and fantasy at the moment. So I was really excited for this one. It's like a mystery magical realism. yeah, I DNF'd this one. I got like 100 and something pages in, about that far. And honestly, it was so freaking boring. I think I compared this when I picked it up. It's like eating plain oatmeal. Like, it just needs some, you know, some brown sugar or some fruit or syrup or something. It was so bland and boring. And I was literally reading this like, I don't understand what the point of this is. It was just so boring. And I heard that it has a really great plot twist. So I flipped ahead and spoiled myself for that so I could read what the plot twist was. And would it have been worth it for me? Probably not. To slog through, you know, 300 pages just to get to a good plot twist. No, not for me. I know Gabby from Gabby Reads really loved this. This was on her like favorites of 2021 list. And for me, it would probably have made one of my least favorites, one of my most disappointing. And it would have made my DNFs because, yeah, I just really, really did not like this. Then I picked up Midnight in Everwood by M.A. Kuzniar. This is a Nutcracker retelling. I believe that this was not Jan, although I love Jan, Jody's Patreon book club pick, Jody from Vanilla Moon. But I heard about this book from Jody, and it's like a wintry fantasy Nutcracker retelling, and that is exactly what I was in the mood for this month. Like, after reading the Winter Night trilogy, I just wanted more winter fantasies. So I'm really glad that I picked this one up. I followed along with the audiobook, which I am glad that I did because I really liked the audiobook. So it's set in 1906 Nottingham, and this girl, Marietta, is a ballerina, and that's what she wants to do with her life, but her father's like, no, you need to get married and like stop acting like a child. You're not going to be a ballerina. And that's all she wants to do. And this mysterious guy comes, and he's kind of, you know, suspicious. He just gives off bad vibes. And he's like a toy inventor, and her family is like, oh, this is the guy that you're gonna marry, so try to like him. She ends up getting trapped in this clock and transported to this world called Everwood, or the town that she gets transported to is called Everwood. And it's like this like sugary, icy, magical land. And yeah, she gets trapped there, and that, you know, that's in the synopsis, but that doesn't happen till about like halfway through the book. So I'm not going to say any more other than she gets like transported to this magical world, and it's darker than what it would seem. But I really love this one. It was the perfect book to read around Christmas time because it's set around Christmas time, and the like atmospheric wintry setting was just perfect for it. It was exactly what I wanted, so I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars. Then I picked up The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. I have never read this. It is like one of the classic portal fantasies. Obviously, everybody knows Narnia. It gets referenced all the time, and you might have seen the movies. But I had never read the book because, I don't know, I think it was written in like 1950. Yes, so it just seemed like inaccessible to me. And for some reason, I just like, maybe it was after reading Midnight in Everwood, I was in the mood for a portal fantasy. And I was like, you know what? Narnia is set in winter, which I'm in the mood for because it's winter here. And I just wanted to finally read it. It's so short. It's less than 200 pages. So I finally read it, and I really loved it. Like, it's not like too difficult to read. I did listen to the audiobook because I find when I want to read like classics, listening to the audiobook helps me understand it better. But I could have read this physically and understood it just fine. But yeah, it was really fun to be in Narnia and see all of the things. And then I did end up watching the movie after reading this, which was also really fun. So if you haven't read this yet and you have an interest to, you're in the mood for a winter portal fantasy, pick it up. It's a fun one. And I ended up giving this 5 stars. It really blew me away. And then the final book that I read in December, the final book that I read in 2021 was The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. This was a reread for me. This is one of my favorite books of all time. Like, okay, I just have to show, I just love this cover so much. I always read with my dust jackets on. I don't do the normal thing and take it off. But for this book, I just really wanted to read it with this cover. So I did. But normally I keep them on. Anyways, that's not relevant. Yeah, so I have been wanting to reread The Starless Sea for a little while now. I think about it a lot. and I reread The Night Circus earlier this year, and well, not earlier this year, like last month. When was that? Yeah, literally in November, so last month. But this is set mostly during winter, and it's really hard to explain this book. It's all kinds of things. It follows this guy, Zachary Ezra Rollins, and he finds this book in his university library that he starts to read, and he realizes as he's reading that one part of the book is about something that happened to him in his past. When he was a little boy, he was walking down the street and there was this door painted on the wall, and it looked very magical and it looked super realistic, but he did not decide to try to open the door and he walked away. And that story of him as a boy is in that book, like exactly as it happened to him. And so he's like, what the heck? How is this written down? Like, what is going on? And so we dive into this kind of secret society that protects stories, and he is like swept away on this journey. And it is just one of the most magical, beautiful stories I've ever read. It is so whimsical. It's a story about stories. So if you like books and storytelling and you really like whimsical, magical writing, then definitely check this book out. I'm sure that everybody and their mother has read it by now. But yeah, it still remains to be one of my favorites of all time. I love this book so much, and I just love all of the magic and just all the stories. There's so many stories at the start of this that you could get easily confused, like why are these stories being told, but just be along for the ride, you know? Obviously, having read this before, I kind of knew where the story was going from the start, and so the story made sense to me from the very beginning, which was kind of fun because the last time I read it, I didn't understand, like, why are we hearing about this, like, pirate and girl and owl king and all this stuff, but on the reread, you're reading it and you're like, oh, I know why that's there. So it was really fun to reread it, like knowing what I know about the book. But yeah, this one is again an obvious 5 out of 5 for me. I love this book so much. So yeah, those are all of the books that I read in December. I had a great reading month. It was super fun, apart from my DNF, which I really did not enjoy. Now that I've finished all of my reading for the year, I can do my end of the year stats video, which should be coming up soon, maybe tomorrow. I don't know, it depends on when I post this one. But yeah, this month was a great reading month for me. So let's do the stack thing. Ooh. So here are all 12 books plus a DNF that I finished in December. So please let me know in the comments down below what books you finished off your year with and what your very last book of 2021 was. I'd be curious to know. So let me know in the comments down below. And thank you again so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!